From the moment consciousness awakens in childhood, it encounters a world already structured to contain it. The first lesson is not how to think, but how to comply. Sit when told. Speak when permitted. Repeat what is taught. Question nothing. This is not education, but conditioning, a systematic replacement of curiosity with conformity. The child who asks why too often is labeled difficult. The one who colors outside the lines is corrected. The one who challenges the teacher is punished. And so begins the slow erosion of independent thought, replaced by the comfortable numbness of following instructions. The system does not announce its intentions. It does not declare that it aims to create obedient workers rather than free thinkers. Instead, it rewards compliance and punishes deviation so consistently that most never realize they have been trained. They mistake their ability to memorize and repeat for intelligence. They confuse their skill at following procedures with competence. They believe their agreement with authority figures represents wisdom. By adulthood, the conditioning is so complete that most people cannot distinguish between their own thoughts and the thoughts they have been programmed to think. This manufactured consent extends beyond formal education into every social structure. The workplace demands not innovation, but adherence to protocol. Social groups require not authenticity, but appropriate performance. Even families often prize harmony over honesty, teaching children to suppress their true feelings to maintain peace. The message is consistent and relentless. Your value comes from how well you fit the mold, not from who you actually are. Your worth is measured by your ability to meet expectations, not by your capacity to question them. The seduction of comfort reinforces this training at every turn. Truth is often uncomfortable, requiring the admission of difficult realities about ourselves and our world. It demands that we confront our limitations, our mortality, our insignificance in the vast machinery of existence. Comfort, by contrast, offers the warm embrace of illusion. It tells us we are special, that our beliefs are correct, that our choices have been wise. Most people, when forced to choose between a difficult truth and a comfortable lie, will choose the lie without even recognizing they had a choice. Consider how this plays out in daily life. The person who stays in an unfulfilling job because changing careers would require admitting years were wasted. The one who remains in a dead relationship because acknowledging its failure would mean confronting loneliness. The individual who clings to outdated beliefs because updating them would require admitting previous ignorance. In each case, the comfort of the familiar outweighs the discomfort of growth. A known suffering becomes preferable to the unknown possibility. Pain avoidance becomes a primary organizing principle of most lives. Not just physical pain, but emotional, psychological, existential pain. The pain of rejection, so people never take risks. The pain of failure, so they never truly try. The pain of being wrong, so they never examine their beliefs. The pain of being alone, so they never develop genuine self-sufficiency. This avoidance creates a life lived within ever-shrinking boundaries, each retreat from discomfort making the next confrontation even more terrifying. The crowd offers refuge from these uncomfortable confrontations with reality. Within the group, individual responsibility dissolves. Personal accountability disappears into collective belief. The burden of thinking is lifted by the consensus of the many. If everyone believes something, it must be true. If everyone is doing something, it must be right. The crowd provides not wisdom, but the illusion of wisdom, not strength, but the appearance of strength. And most people spend their entire lives mistaking this illusion for reality. The mechanics of crowd psychology operate below conscious awareness. When surrounded by others who share our views, our critical faculties shut down. The part of the brain responsible for questioning and analysis literally becomes less active. We stop evaluating information and start accepting it. We cease thinking and begin feeling, swept along by the emotional current of the group. This is why crowds can believe absurdities that no individual member would accept alone. The collective stupidity exceeds the sum of individual ignorance. Yet the crowd always appears confident, even when wrong. It speaks with the authority of numbers, the false certainty that comes from mutual reinforcement. Every member feels validated by every other member, creating a feedback loop of confirmation that feels like truth, but is merely amplification. The louder the crowd becomes, the more it drowns out dissenting voices, including the quiet voice of individual conscience. Those who might question are silenced not by force, but by the overwhelming volume of agreement. The price of belonging to the crowd is the surrender of individual judgment. To remain in good standing, one must not merely go along, but actively participate in the collective delusion. Doubt must be suppressed. Questions must be swallowed. Contradictions must be ignored. The person who points out that the emperor has no clothes is not thanked, but expelled. The crowd does not want truth. It wants consensus. And it will sacrifice any member who threatens that consensus, no matter how accurate their observation. This dynamic creates a peculiar form of blindness. The person embedded in crowd thinking cannot see their own imprisonment because everyone around them shares the same cage. They mistake the bars for the horizon. They confuse the echo chamber for the world. They believe their borrowed thoughts are original. Their programmed responses are choices. Their conditioned behaviors are free will. The tragedy is not that they are trapped, but that they cannot see the trap, cannot even imagine that a trap exists. The individual who begins to wake from this collective slumber faces an immediate crisis. To question the crowd is to risk expulsion. To think independently is to invite isolation. To seek truth over comfort is to guarantee discomfort. Most people, faced with this choice, retreat back into the warm embrace of groupthink. They tell themselves that their brief moment of doubt was foolishness, that the crowd must be right, that belonging matters more than truth. And so they sink back into the comfortable unconsciousness that passes for life. The paradox of kindness reveals itself most clearly in moments of exploitation. The person who gives endlessly, who always says yes, who prioritizes others' comfort above their own needs, often believes they are embodying virtue. Society reinforces this belief, praising selflessness while ignoring how it enables predation. But kindness without the strength to enforce boundaries is not virtue but vulnerability. It invites not respect but consumption. The generous person without limits becomes not a source of inspiration, but a resource to be depleted. This dynamic plays out in countless relationships where one person's inability to say no becomes another's permission to take everything. The friend who always lends money but never sees it returned. The employee who accepts every additional task until they collapse under the weight. The partner who forgives every transgression until they no longer recognize themselves. In each case, what appears as kindness is actually fear dressed in noble clothing. Fear of conflict, fear of abandonment, fear of being seen as selfish. The kindness is not chosen from strength, but compelled from weakness. The world quickly learns to recognize this pattern. Those who take without giving develop an almost supernatural ability to identify people who give without limits. They gravitate toward these individuals like predators sensing prey, not necessarily from conscious malice, but from an instinctive recognition of opportunity. The person who cannot enforce boundaries becomes surrounded by those who benefit from that inability. Their kindness does not create a better world, but enables a worse one, feeding the very behaviors that cause suffering. True strength paired with kindness creates an entirely different dynamic. When someone can enforce boundaries, their generosity becomes a choice rather than a compulsion. Their yes means something because they have demonstrated the capacity to say no. Their forgiveness carries weight because they have shown they can also walk away. This combination of strength and kindness does not invite exploitation, but commands respect. It teaches others how to behave through consequence rather than endless accommodation. The question of discipline reveals another fundamental misunderstanding about human behavior. Most people wait for the right feeling before taking action. They need to feel motivated to exercise, inspired to create, energized to pursue their goals. But feelings are weather, constantly changing, utterly unreliable. The person who bases their actions on their emotional state builds their life on shifting sand. They make progress only when conditions are perfect, which is to say, they rarely make progress at all. Discipline emerges not from feeling, but from decision. It is the expression of what you value rather than what you want in the moment. The person who exercises when they do not feel like it is not punishing themselves, but honoring their commitment to health. The one who works on their project when inspiration is absent is not forcing creativity, but respecting their vision. The individual who maintains their boundaries when it would be easier to surrender is not being difficult, but demonstrating self-respect. This relationship between action and identity runs deeper than most realize. Every action is a vote for the type of person you are becoming. Each choice to act according to your values, rather than your momentary feelings, strengthens the connection between who you are and what you do. Conversely, each surrender to immediate comfort over long-term purpose weakens that connection. Over time, these small choices compound into either a life of integrity or one of perpetual compromise. The social dynamics of personal growth reveal uncomfortable truths about human relationships. When someone begins to change, to evolve beyond their assigned role in others' lives, the reaction is rarely celebration. Instead, there is often resistance, sometimes subtle, sometimes overt. The family member who loses weight finds relatives suddenly concerned about their health. The friend who starts a business discovers companions who question their judgment. The colleague who pursues education encounters coworkers who remind them of their place. This resistance stems not from conscious malevolence, but from unconscious threat. Every person's identity is partially constructed from their relationships with others. When someone changes, it destabilizes these constructions. The friend who is always available becomes less so as they pursue their goals. The sibling who is the family failure threatens the successful one's identity by succeeding. The partner who is dependent develops independence. Each change forces others to either adjust their own identities or resist the change. Most choose resistance. The phenomenon extends beyond individual relationships to entire social systems. Communities develop unspoken hierarchies and roles that members are expected to maintain. The moment someone begins to transcend their assigned position, the system mobilizes to restore balance. This might manifest as gossip, withdrawal of support, or active sabotage. The message is clear without being stated. Stay in your place or lose your place. Many people, faced with this choice, abandon their growth to preserve their belonging. The shadow represents everything about ourselves we have been taught to deny. Every human contains multitudes, including aspects society deems unacceptable. Anger in those taught to be perpetually pleasant. Selfishness in those trained to be endlessly giving. Desire in those conditioned to be pure. These aspects do not disappear when denied. They retreat into unconsciousness, where they operate without oversight, emerging in moments of weakness or stress in ways that often surprise and appall the person experiencing them. The suppressed shadow gains power precisely because it is hidden. Like pressure building in a sealed container, it seeks release through whatever cracks it can find. The person who denies their anger might experience sudden explosive rage over trivial matters. The one who suppresses their selfishness might find themselves taking in ways they cannot explain. The individual who refuses to acknowledge their desire might act out in ways that sabotage their stated values. The shadow always finds expression, but when unconscious, that expression is often destructive. Integration of the shadow requires first acknowledging its existence. This means recognizing that you contain every human capacity, not just the ones you prefer. You are capable of cruelty, as well as kindness, of deception, as well as honesty, of hate, as well as love. This recognition is not an endorsement, but an acceptance of reality. Only by acknowledging these capacities can you choose consciously which to express. The person who knows their capacity for cruelty can choose kindness. The one who denies it might be cruel while believing themselves kind. The trap of perpetual accommodation operates through a mechanism so subtle that most never recognize it as a trap at all. The person who shapes themselves to meet others' expectations believes they are being considerate, flexible, adaptive. They pride themselves on their ability to read a room, to sense what others need, to provide it before being asked. This appears to be a form of social intelligence, even wisdom. But underneath this constant adjustment lies a troubling absence. The self that exists independent of others' needs has never been allowed to develop. This pattern typically begins in childhood, when approval becomes synonymous with survival. The child learns that certain expressions bring warmth, while others bring coldness or punishment. They develop an exquisite sensitivity to others' emotional states, not from empathy, but from necessity. They become experts at anticipating reactions, preventing displeasure, maintaining equilibrium. This skill serves them well initially, earning praise for being easy, good, considerate. But the cost accumulates invisibly. Each adjustment, each suppression of authentic response, each prioritization of others' comfort over their own truth creates a small fracture in their sense of self. By adulthood, this pattern has become so automatic that it operates below consciousness. The person no longer chooses to accommodate. They simply do, as naturally as breathing. Asked for their opinion, they first scan for what others want to hear. Asked about their needs, they consider what would be least burdensome. Asked who they are, they genuinely do not know, because they have always been whoever others needed them to be. Their identity has become a mirror reflecting others back to themselves, never revealing what lies behind the glass. The cognitive burden of this constant calibration is exhausting. Every interaction requires complex calculations about what to say, how to be, which version of themselves to present. They maintain multiple personas, each tailored to different people's expectations, switching between them seamlessly, but never feeling authentic in any. They second-guess every word, analyze every response, replay conversations searching for signs of displeasure. Their mind never rests because it is constantly working to maintain the elaborate performance that has replaced genuine existence. The cruel irony is that this endless effort to be seen positively ensures they are never truly seen at all. Others interact with the performance, not the person. They form relationships with the accommodation, not the authentic self. The people-pleaser creates exactly what they fear most, which is isolation, but a particular kind of isolation, surrounded by people who claim to know them, but know only what they have been shown. The loneliness of being unknown, while constantly surrounded by others who believe they know you, is perhaps the deepest form of alienation possible. When someone reaches the goals society promised would bring fulfillment and finds only emptiness, the disorientation can be profound. They did everything right according to the script they were given. They obtained the education, built the career, formed the relationships, accumulated the possessions. Each milestone was supposed to bring satisfaction, meaning, wholeness. Instead, they arrive at each destination feeling more hollow than before. The question that haunts them is not why did I fail, but why does success feel like failure? This emptiness is not a personal failing, but a structural inevitability. The goals they pursued were never their own, but were inherited from parents, absorbed from culture, adopted from peer groups. They climbed the ladder without asking where it led, only to discover it was leaning against the wrong wall. The life they built with such effort and sacrifice turns out to be a museum of other people's values, impressive to observe, but impossible to inhabit authentically. They have everything they were supposed to want, and nothing they actually need. The modern world offers a seductive substitute for this existential emptiness in the form of attention. Social media, professional networking, constant connectivity promise to fill the void with validation. Likes, shares, followers, and comments create a simulacrum of meaning that feels almost real. The dopamine hit of notification provides momentary relief from the underlying absence. But attention is not connection, visibility is not intimacy, and being seen is not the same as being known. The addiction to attention operates like any other addiction, requiring constantly increasing doses to achieve diminishing effects. The person who once felt validated by 10 likes now needs 100. The one who felt accomplished with local recognition now needs global reach. The individual who felt connected through occasional interaction now needs constant engagement. But no amount of attention can satisfy, because attention addresses the symptom, not the cause. It provides external noise to drown out internal silence, but never actually fills the void. The cycle becomes self-reinforcing. The more attention someone seeks, the more they must perform to obtain it. The more they perform, the further they drift from authentic expression. The further they drift, the emptier they feel. The emptier they feel, the more desperately they seek attention. Each revolution of this cycle increases both the performance and the emptiness, creating a spiral that leads nowhere except exhaustion. Meanwhile, genuine meaning remains as elusive as ever, because meaning cannot be manufactured through external validation. It emerges from alignment between inner truth and outer action. It comes from doing work that resonates with your deepest values, not work that impresses others. It arises from relationships based on mutual recognition, not mutual performance. It develops through expression of authentic self, not construction of acceptable image. But accessing genuine meaning requires first acknowledging its absence. And that acknowledgement is precisely what the attention-seeking behavior is designed to avoid. The confrontation with mortality cuts through all of these illusions with brutal clarity. Death does not care about your accommodations, your achievements, or your attention. It arrives regardless of how well you have pleased others, how perfectly you have met expectations, how many followers you have accumulated. In its presence, the elaborate constructions of false self collapse. The performances become pointless. The mirrors reflecting others' expectations shatter. What remains is only what was real, and for many, that is terrifyingly little. The moment of recognition that your entire life has been constructed from false materials arrives not as dramatic revelation, but as quiet understanding. The achievements that were supposed to matter feel hollow. The relationships built on performance rather than truth reveal themselves as elaborate theater. The identity you have worn for so long fits like clothes belonging to someone else. This recognition brings not liberation but terror, because if everything you have built is false, what remains? The answer, initially, appears to be nothing. This apparent nothingness terrifies most people back into their familiar patterns. They glimpse the void where authentic self should exist and immediately retreat into the comfort of their constructed identity. Better to live a false life than face the emptiness, they decide, though they rarely articulate this choice so clearly. They return to their performances, their accommodations, their pursuit of external validation, but now with an underlying awareness that makes everything feel slightly hollow. They know they are performing, but they continue anyway because the alternative seems worse. For those who do not retreat, who stand in that space of apparent nothingness long enough for their eyes to adjust, something unexpected emerges. The void is not actually empty, but full of possibility. The absence of false construction creates space for authentic emergence, but this emergence cannot be forced or rushed. It happens slowly, tentatively, like new growth after fire has cleared away the undergrowth. Small preferences appear. Genuine responses surface. Actual desires make themselves known. These are often so quiet, so different from the loud performances of false self, that they are easy to miss. The process of shedding false elements proves more difficult than most anticipate. These false constructions are not merely ideas, but entire systems of relationship, identity, and meaning. To release them means to fundamentally alter how you exist in the world. The friend who only knows your performed self will not recognize your authentic expression. The job that fit your false identity will become intolerable to your true nature. The life you built to meet external expectations will no longer accommodate who you are becoming. Everything must change, and most of it must go. This shedding happens in stages, each loss creating space for something more real to emerge. First go the obvious performances, the roles you played that never felt natural. Then the subtler accommodations, the small daily betrayals of self you barely noticed. Then the deeper structures, the fundamental assumptions about who you must be to deserve existence. Each release is both liberation and grief. You mourn the safety of the false, even as you recognize its imprisonment. You grieve the simplicity of performance, even as you embrace the complexity of authenticity. The relationships that survive this transformation are few, but real. Most connections were built on mutual performance, each person reflecting what the other needed to see. When you stop performing, these relationships have no foundation and quickly dissolve. The people who claim to love you discover they loved only your accommodation of their needs. The ones who said they knew you realize they knew only your mask. But occasionally, rarely, someone sees through the dissolution to what is emerging and chooses to stay. These connections, built on recognition rather than performance, have a quality of depth that makes all previous relationships seem like shadows. The work that emerges from authentic self differs qualitatively from work produced to meet external expectations. It may not be more successful by conventional measures. It might not generate wealth or recognition or approval, but it carries a quality of necessity, of rightness, that makes external validation irrelevant. The person creating from authentic expression does not need others to confirm the value of their work because they feel its value in the act of creation. The work becomes not a means to an end, but an expression of being. This shift from external to internal validation represents a fundamental reorganization of consciousness. The locus of authority moves from outside to inside. The question changes from what should I do to what must I do. The metric shifts from how will this be received to how does this express truth. This reorganization is not a one-time event, but an ongoing practice. The pull toward external validation remains strong, encoded in neural pathways developed over decades. Choosing internal authority requires constant vigilance, repeated choice, conscious rejection of the easier path. The freedom that emerges from this practice is not the freedom to do anything, but the freedom to do what is yours to do. This is a much more limited freedom than the boundless possibilities sold by self-help culture. It recognizes that each person has specific capacities, particular perspectives, unique contributions that are theirs alone to make. Discovering what these are requires stripping away everything that is not essential, everything adopted from others, everything performed for approval. What remains may be small, but it is real. The cost of this freedom is everything that was providing false safety. The approval you will not receive when you stop performing. The belonging you will lose when you stop accommodating. The identity others recognize that you must abandon. The simplicity of following external rules that you must exchange for the complexity of internal navigation. The comfort of knowing your place that you must trade for the uncertainty of creating your own. These are not small losses. They represent everything that made life feel manageable, predictable, safe. Yet those who pay this price and survive report a quality of existence that makes the previous life seem like sleepwalking. They describe a sense of alignment, of rightness, of being in their proper place in the world. Not comfortable, necessarily. Not easy. But real in a way that makes all previous experience seem like rehearsal. They have exchanged the safety of the known for the vitality of the authentic, the comfort of performance for the challenge of truth. The warning inherent in all of this is not that you should immediately abandon everything false in your life. Such dramatic action often represents just another performance, another external rule followed. The warning is that unconscious patterns are shaping your existence in ways you do not recognize. That comfort might be killing what is most alive in you, that the crowd might be wrong, that your kindness might be weakness, that your discipline might be missing, that your shadow might be controlling you. That death is coming and will reveal whether you lived your life or performed it. These recognitions do not require immediate action, but immediate awareness. See clearly first. Action, when it comes, will arise from that clarity rather than from another set of external instructions about how to live.